found in the duster desert winds of Corvin 3 howled like ghosts across the crimson sand. Once a bustling mining colony, the outpost had long since been abandoned, left to decay under a rust-colored sky. Forgotten by time and bureaucracy alike, no one came here anymore, not unless they were running from something or searching for things best left buried. Cole Travers was doing a bit of both. He stood at the edge of a broken comms tower, hands buried in the pockets of his dusty coat, scanning the horizon through polarized goggles. The sun was cruel today, burning down through a haze of static-charged dust. His scavenger drone hummed beside him, wings flickering with dull light as it catalogued the scrap scattered across the valley. Then he saw her. First, he thought it was a mirage, a trick of the heat shimmering above the dunes. A small figure, stumbling through the sand, barely upright. She collapsed once, struggled to her feet, took a few more steps before falling face first into the dirt again. Not human. Cole's breath caught in his throat. He leapt from the tower, boots hitting the cracked earth hard. The drone chirped in alarm as it followed. By the time he reached her, she was unconscious, a tiny, delicate thing barely more than a child. Her skin had a pale lavender hue, thin veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. Her limbs trembled involuntarily, her breathing shallow. Two large, pointed ears twitched once before going still. A child, an alien left here to die. Cole didn't ask why. He didn't wonder what species she was, or if she was dangerous. He knelt beside her and gently pulled her into his arms. The heat radiating from her body told him she wouldn't last much longer. He tapped the drone's interface, opened the medbay. "We've got an emergency." Within minutes they were back aboard the Dustwalker, Cole's battered but functional survey craft. The girl lay on the examination bed, wrapped in a blanket, too big for her tiny frame. A medical scanner beeped steadily beside her. Readings showed signs of extreme dehydration, starvation, and mild radiation exposure. Cole sat nearby, silently watching. The ship hummed softly around him, a low, familiar lullaby of functioning systems and life support. He didn't know who she was, didn't know how she ended up wandering a dead world alone, but something in him, something deep, refused to leave her there. He thought of his sister, dead 3 years now, lost in a refugee camp, bombed during the Harlock raids. He thought of how helpless he'd felt, how empty it had left him. This little girl, someone had done the same to her, and this time he wasn't going to stand by. Hours passed. The girl slept in waves of uneasy dreams, her tiny hands twitching, lips murmuring sounds in a language the translator couldn't catch. At one point, she screamed a word, maybe a name, and Cole had to hold her down gently until the med scanner calmed her vitals again. Later that night, she opened her eyes. They were large and silver, almost luminescent in the dim light of the ship. Her gaze locked on Cole instantly, wide with confusion and fear. "It's all right," he said softly, raising his hands. "You're safe now. I found you outside. You were almost gone." Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He brought her a pouch of rehydration fluid and helped her drink. She watched him the entire time, warily, as if expecting some hidden cruelty. When she finally spoke, it was a whisper. "Why did you help me?" Cole didn't answer right away. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them. "Because someone should have," he said at last. She blinked. A single tear traced down the side of her face and vanished into the blanket. "My name's Cole," he added gently. "What's yours?" She hesitated. "Leary," she said. "Nice to meet you, Leary." She closed her eyes again, the exhaustion pulling her back under, but this time her breathing was steadier, her body less tense. Cole leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling of the medbay. He didn't know what he had just gotten himself into, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let her die. Whispers in the dark hole didn't sleep that night. He sat in the co-pilot seat of the Dustwalker, sipping rehydrated coffee, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond the cracked viewport. Corvin 3's broken orbit gave it a jagged sky, one star rising while another was still setting. Binary systems always had a way of keeping your instincts off balance. Behind him, in the medbay, the alien girl, Lyra, slept quietly. He checked on her every hour. She had barely spoken since waking, but her eyes, they had seen things no child should ever see. At sunrise, or what passed for it, Cole ran a diagnostic on the ship's long-range comms. It wasn't great news. The transmitter was still jammed from the sandstorm 2 days ago. He could boost a distress ping, but full messages were enough. And deep down, he wasn't sure if he wanted anyone to know where they were. The more he thought about it, the more it didn't sit right. Who abandons a child like that, in a desert wasteland, alone, dying, unless they wanted her to disappear? He heard movement. Cole turned. Leary was awake. standing barefoot in the doorway of the cockpit, one hand gripping the frame for balance. She still looked like she could collapse any moment, but there was something different in her now. A silent defiance. A spark. She wore an oversized thermal shirt, the sleeves swallowing her arms. Her silver eyes scanned the room slowly, calculating. "I was dreaming," she said softly. Cole raised an eyebrow. "Nightmare." She shook her head. "Not this time. I saw my sister before they took her." Cole's heart sank. "I'm sorry," she looked down. "They left me because I fought back." He leaned forward. "Who did?" She hesitated, then sat in the co-pilot's seat, legs tucked under her like a child trying not to take up too much space. "They called themselves the Red Path," she whispered. That name hit him like a punch in the gut. He knew it. Everyone in the fringe systems did. A rogue paramilitary group, expirates, slavers, extremists, operated outside any galactic law. They raided weak colonies, took what they wanted, and disappeared into black space. Sometimes they recruited children. More often they used them. "You escaped them?" Cole asked, voice lower now. "I ran, they chased me, then I hid in the storm." "And your sister?" Leary looked away. "She didn't run." Cole didn't ask more. He didn't need to. He'd seen enough in old war zones to know what that meant. He checked the long-range sensors. Again routine habit, but something caught his eye. A faint signature. Small, cold, but close. A scout ship, not his. "Damn," he muttered. "Lir." I froze. "They're here." Could be anyone. But if it's the Red Path, he flicked switches, powering up the ship's interior shielding and rotating the dust screens on the outer hull. "They always scan first," Leary said quietly. "They look for heat signatures." Cole nodded. "Then let's make this place look like a tomb." He dropped the interior temp, set the ship to silent mode, powered down all unnecessary systems. The dust walker went dark like a ghost. For the next 10 minutes, they waited in silence. The scout ship drifted slowly across the sky, a small silhouette against the red sun. It hovered, scanned, moved on. When the blip finally vanished, Cole let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Leary sat unmoving, still like she had done this a dozen times before. When he turned to her, he saw tears streaking silently down her face. "I don't want to hide forever," she said. "You won't," Cole replied. "You can't stop them," she said. "No one ever does." He looked out at the sky again. "Maybe not, but we can make sure they regret ever trying." That night, they ate together. Cole cooked ration bars with scavenged herbs from his hydro kit, turned the flavorless sludge into something almost edible. Leary smiled faintly. He told her stories about old planets he'd been to, the strange cultures he'd seen, the time he'd accidentally stolen a ceremonial headdress from a plant-based species and ended up becoming their leaf prince for a week. She laughed, just once. A short, shocked laugh, like her body didn't remember how to do it. Later she asked, "Why are you here, alone?" Cole stirred the camp stove absently. "I used to serve in the colonial peacekeepers, walked away after a bad mission. Spent years flying solo, fixing junk, trading pieces, avoiding people." Leary looked at him. "You didn't avoid me." He glanced at her, surprised. "No," he said, "I didn't." She touched her blanket, voice smaller now. "Does that mean I matter?" Cole didn't know what to say, so he knelt beside her, put his hand gently on hers, and said, "You matter more than they ever did." Her eyes welled up again, but this time she didn't look away. In the following days, they worked together. Cole taught her how to reroute thermal capacitors, how to handle tools, how to identify scavenger drones from attack units. She learned faster than he expected. She wasn't just smart, she was determined, focused, wounded, yes, but not broken. She began to fix parts of the ship on her own. Quietly, carefully, he realized something. She wasn't just surviving, she was preparing for something bigger, something coming. And when he asked her gently what she was building, she looked him in the eye and said, "I'm going to make them pay for what they did." The chip that shouldn't exist started with a glitch in the nav system. Cole had been running routine diagnostics while Leary practiced recalibrating the coolant system, a task that would have taken most adults hours, but she was already halfway done in 30 minutes. That's when the Dustwalker's navigation core lit up with a brief warning. "Encrypted signal detected, unknown source." Cole frowned. "That's not possible. I disabled all auto-linking." He pulled up the system logs. The signal wasn't from outside, it was coming from inside the ship. He turned around. "Leary, where'd you get that?" She froze. In her small hands was a flat thumb-sized metallic disc, scuffed and burnt around the edges, barely held together by cracked circuitry. A data chip, ancient, but encrypted in a military-grade format. "I found it." she said quietly, in the lining of my cloak. I didn't know what it was. Cole stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Leary, that's not just any chip. That's colonial-level encryption. Where exactly did it come from? She looked down, voice shaking. My sister gave it to me, before they took her. He took a long breath and sat on the edge of the console. All right, let's see what your sister thought was worth dying for. With a few tweaks and bypasses and a deep sigh, he bypassed the security locks. It was old encryption, but Cole had once cracked enemy comms during war. It all came back in his fingers. The screen blinked to life. A series of star maps, names, shipment schedules, docking routes, but more importantly, red path codes, smuggling manifests, names of buyers, even details about children being trafficked for experimentation or military induction. Cole's blood ran cold. This chip wasn't just a threat to Red Path, it was a kill order. Anyone caught with it would be exterminated. No questions. Asked. Leary was watching him, eyes wide. Is it bad? Cole turned slowly. It's dangerous. The kind of dangerous that could get both of us hunted to the edge of the galaxy. Her voice quivered. Then maybe it's worth something. He looked at her, this girl who had seen more death than joy, who should have been too broken to care, and felt something shift in him. She wasn't just a survivor. She was trying to be something more, and he couldn't let her do it alone. That night, as Corvin's moons lit the ruined land in twin silver arcs, Cole sat beside Leary in the common room, both of them wrapped in silence. The chip rested between them like a loaded weapon. If we transmit this, he said, every bounty hunter within 12 sectors will be on us. Then we don't transmit, Leary whispered. We deliver it. In person. To who? She hesitated. You said you used to work with the peacekeepers, Cole scoffed. Yeah, and I also said I left. They're not saints, kid. They're politicians with guns. But you know people. Someone honest. He didn't answer right away. There had been one, a woman named Captain Alira Vossa, former field commander who had once protected refugee ships during the Varkan Purge. She'd gone rogue after the higher-ups told her to abandon a colony to save face, if anyone still believed in justice. She's stationed near Trinex Station, he muttered. That's 4 jumps from here. Leary nodded. Then that's where we go. Cole looked at her, small, scarred, still trembling under the weight of memory, and realized he no longer saw a child. He saw a cause. And for the first time in years, he felt like a soldier again. 2 days later, the Dustwalker broke orbit, jumped drive wind as it aligned to the first beacon. Cole checked the sensors 3 times before punching the command. Just before the stars stretched into long white lines, Leary touched his sleeve. If something happens to me, don't. Cole interrupted, eyes forward. We both make it. That's the deal. She didn't argue, but her hand lingered on the chip strapped to her belt. The jump spit them out near the edges of the Javari cluster, uncharted, unstable space full of debris and pirate hideouts. A shortcut, but not a safe one, which is why it wasn't surprising when an alert flashed across the screen. Unregistered vessel, intercepting vector. Cole gritted his teeth. Of course. Red Path? Leary asked. He stared at the approaching ship. Too big for a scout, but too quiet for a freighter. It could be a shadow vessel. What do we do? Cole flicked switches. The Dustwalker roared as its weapons came online. We give them a reason to pick the wrong target. The enemy ship came in fast, cloaked under ion masking until the last second. Plasma bolts lit up the blackness, cutting dangerously close to the hull. The Dustwalker spun hard, dodging with a grace it hadn't used in years. Leary held onto the crash seat, staring at the tactical display, where the enemy's engine signature now glowed red. Hit the fuel lines, Cole barked. Weak spot on. Older models. I'm not a soldier, she snapped. No, he said. You're smarter. I'll guide. You fire. And she did. With Cole's calm voice in her ear, Leary tapped commands with trembling fingers. The cannon shuddered, sending a pulse shot through space and struck true. The enemy ship's flank exploded into fire and debris. They had won. But the signal sent by the Red Path ship before its destruction, that was still out there. As Cole repaired the stabilizers, Leary approached, hands still shaking. I didn't think I could do that. He looked at her, then smiled faintly. You didn't just survive. You fought back. She didn't smile, but her shoulders straightened. Her eyes met his. I want to finish this, she said. Whatever it takes. Cole knew then that this was no longer about protecting a scared girl. This was about justice. About making the monsters that shattered lives pay. And together, they would take the fight to them. Trinex Station. Burns Trinex Station was a paradox in orbit, glimmering on the outside, rotting on the inside. The sprawling hub floated like a silver tumor in space, nestled in the shadow of a blue dwarf star. Once built as a trade nexus between outer colonies and inner worlds, it had since become a sanctuary for smugglers, deserters, info brokers, and anyone with too many enemies to stay anywhere else. But beneath its flickering signs and foe-welcoming exterior, Trinex had a heartbeat, dark, erratic, and pulsing with secrets. Cole maneuvered the Dustwalker toward Docking Bay 11, an old hangar he once used during smuggling runs a lifetime ago. As the ship slid into its berth, steam hissing from the landing gears, Leary stood behind him, arms crossed, posture tight. "You sure she's still here?" she asked quietly. "Captain Voss," Cole said, powering down the thrusters. "If she's not, this whole trip just became a suicide run." He tried to sound confident, but his chest was heavy. Voss wasn't the forgiving type. He'd left things unfinished. Inside the station, the air was thicker than it should have been, recycled too long, saturated with sweat, engine oil, and the sharp scent of anxiety. Leary wore her hood up, her face shadowed, but even still, she drew attention. Her strange eyes, her unnatural stillness, it made people glance twice. Cole guided her through back corridors, avoiding security patrols and digital checkpoints. They arrived at a sealed maintenance hatch marked Sector G-Delta. He knocked 3 times, waited, knocked twice more. A pause, then a hiss of decompression. The door opened. A tall woman in dark combat armor stood before them, her face sharp, scarred, and unamused. Her cybernetic eye whirred softly as it focused on Cole. "Voss," he said with a nod. "Cole Travers." She replied flatly, "I thought you were dead, or smart enough to stay that way. Got a reason to be dumber now." She looked at Leary. "Is that your reason?" Leary didn't flinch under the scrutiny. "I have something," she said. "Something they'll kill for." Voss arched an eyebrow. "They who?" Cole stepped in. The red path that got her attention. Inside the safe house, a reinforced bunker layered beneath the station. Cole handed her the data chip. Voss plugged it into an isolated terminal and began decrypting. It didn't take long before her expression changed. Disbelief, then rage. "This isn't just a ledger," she whispered. "This is a war map. Names of corrupt officers, payment trails, even peacekeeper defectors." She stood up, pacing. "With this, I could bring down 3 systems worth of criminal infrastructure. You could burn the whole rot to the ground," Cole added. Voss looked between them. "Why bring this to me? You could have sold it to a dozen intel cores." "Because it's not about credits," Cole said. "It's about justice." Leary finally spoke. "They took my sister. I won't let them do it to anyone else." Voss studied her, then nodded slowly. "You have guts, kid. That'll get you killed. But it'll make your enemies bleed first." As Voss began prepping the data for secure transport, the bunker trembled. A low rumble, a flicker in the lights. Then alarms screamed. "Explosive decompression detected. Sector C breached." Cole's heart dropped. "They found us." A moment later, the outer door burst open, and chaos followed. Red path mercs flooded the hall, masked, armored, and ruthless. Cole grabbed Leary, pulling her behind an overturned crate as bullets and plasma blasts lit the corridor like a storm. Voss dove toward a mounted turret, returning fire with vicious precision. Cole fired 2 rounds, dropping a scout trying to flank them. "They had to have tracked the ship, Leary. You said they scanned for energy pulses." "Yes, I shut everything down. I swear." "Then someone sold us out," Voss growled, dropping another 2 enemies. "Get her out, now." "But the data," Leary cried. "I'll get it to the right people," Voss snapped. "You get to stay alive." Cole nodded grimly. He grabbed Leary's hand and pulled her toward a maintenance shaft, but just as they reached it, a grenade rolled across the floor toward Voss. She looked at it once, then at Cole, and smiled. "Go." The explosion rocked the chamber. They fled through the smoke, fire nipping at their heels. Leary sobbed quietly, not from fear but fury. She stayed behind. She gave her life. Cole didn't answer. His jaw clenched tight as he dragged her through crumbling corridors, blood pounding in his ears. They reached the ship. The Dustwalker roared to life. As they pulled away from the burning station, Leary stared at the explosion behind them. The flames reflected in her eyes. "Voss died for that ship." "No," Cole said quietly. "She died for what it represents." "And now?" Leary asked, voice shaking. Cole's hand tightened on the controls. "Now, we finish what she started." That night, under the cold starlight of an uncharted system, Cole and Leary sat in silence. She opened the ship's datapad and replayed Voss's final transmission set seconds before the detonation. "Give them hell, kid. Make it count." Leary turned to Cole. I'm done running. He met her eyes. So am I. The ghost prison. Cole adjusted the nav as the Dustwalker cut through deep space silence, each system running on low power to avoid detection. They were heading toward Galen's Reach, a dark sector known only through rumor supposedly housing a hidden Red Path facility where unwanted alien children were taken, vanished, and never heard from again. Leary sat near the observation window, hugging her knees, eyes lost in the stars. He glanced back at her. You sure about this? No, she whispered, but if my sister's still alive, she might be there. Cole had no proof, only a thread of signal trace Voss embedded in the decrypted data before her death. It pointed to a mining outpost turned black site. No name, no traffic, just a pulse like a dying heartbeat in a starless grave. That it was a long shot, but they had nothing else, and Leary deserved the truth. The facility didn't appear until they were nearly on top of it, a jagged structure buried inside an asteroid, cloaked behind a gravity well that made long-range sensors useless. A single docking port blinked with automated clearance codes, Red Path encryption. Cole frowned. They're not expecting visitors. Then let's surprise them, Leary said. Dot. Her voice had changed. Dot, still gentle, but sharper now, steeled. The interior of the base was colder than they expected. Lights, flickering atmosphere, stale. Cole's steps echoed through metal corridors lined with old mining gear and forgotten tech. His pistol was drawn. Leary followed, close, scanning with the handheld scrambler. Voss left them detecting M signatures and life signs. Something's wrong, she murmured. There's no movement. They turned a corner and stopped. A holding cell, rows of them. Empty, except for the final one. Inside sat a single figure, thin, curled in the corner, long lavender hair matted and torn. Leary, Cole said softly. Is that? She ran ahead before he could finish. The girl inside lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, swollen and bruised, widened as she saw Leary, a samurai. It was her sister. Dot, still alive. The door was sealed tight, but the override was simple old Red Path design. Cole disabled it in seconds, and Leary rushed in, collapsing beside her sister, wrapping thin arms around her. Sarai was barely conscious, but she smiled. You found me. I never stopped looking, Leary whispered, tears falling freely. Cole turned to keep watch, heart pounding. He had seen reunion, but not like this. Not on the edge of nowhere. Not after death had waited so long. Who else is here? Cole asked. Sarai tried to speak, but coughed, her voice barely more than a rasp. Teeth. They moved. The others. A week ago, said. New buyers. Buyers? Leary asked, horrified. Children, dozens, split between transports. They were experimenting. Some never woke up. Cole swore, where Sarai raised a trembling hand. They kept logs in the command core. Cole turned to Leary. Get her to the medbay. I'll retrieve the data. No, she said, rising. We go together. He looked at her. Was no longer the girl he'd found dying in the sand. She was becoming something more. Someone dangerous to her enemies. They reached the command core after a tense walk through abandoned labs, shattered monitors, and signs of hasty retreat. It was clear, after Voss's death and the data breach, Red Path had begun cleaning house, but they hadn't wiped everything. Cole accessed the main terminal. Dozens of shipment manifests, coordinates, experiment logs. .1 entry made Leary freeze. Subject designation, LIRIEX8. Status, escaped. Recovery priority, maximum. Underneath was a file labeled Genetic Inversion Trials Phase 3. She opened it and saw her name again, not as a person, as a test subject. She read aloud, voice hollow. Subject exhibits extreme neural adaptation and data absorption, emotional resilience, unstable. Recommended for behavioral override. They weren't just using kids, Cole said grimly. They were building weapons. Leary stared at the screen, then erased the file. Not anymore. They transferred the remaining data to a secure drive and prepared to leave. But the system issued a final alert. Outbound beacon activated. They knew we'd come, Cole said. And then the station began to hum. Engines powering up. Self-destruct. There. Not letting this place fall into new hands, Leary muttered. We need to run. They sprinted through the station, dragging Sarai on a hover stretcher Cole rigged from broken equipment. Explosions echoed through the tunnels as plasma charges went off in sequence. Dust and debris fell from above. Steam hissed from broken pipes. One corridor collapsed entirely, cutting off their path. No time to double back, Cole yelled. We make a hole. He handed Leary a micro-explosive charge from his belt. She planted it on a side panel. Wait. A tunnel of smoke and sparks. They burst through and dove into the Dustwalker. Just as fire engulfed the docking bay behind them, Cole launched the ship with one broken thruster, but it held. The asteroid prison vanished in a starburst behind them. Later, after stabilizing Sarai and checking the coordinates of the last logged transport ships, Cole sat in the cockpit. Leary entered quietly, sitting beside him. She was never the same after they took me, she said. But she waited. She believed. She was right too. Leary looked at the stars ahead. So what now? Cole turned to her. We have their routes, their labs, their buyers. We expose all of it. Burn it from the inside. She looked down at her hand scarred, still trembling, then clenched it into a fist. We make them pay. The signal that shook the stars, the Dustwalker drifted in the orbit of ruined Belt 09. A debris field where broken warships and forgotten techs spun endlessly in silence. A natural graveyard and the perfect place to hide. Cole ran diagnostics on the outer hull while Leary sat beside her recovering sister Sarai, reviewing the files they stole from the facility. They weren't just logs. They were blueprints detailing what the Red Path had done, what they were planning, and where dozens of children from multiple species were taken, altered, and then sold as either obedient companions or weapons. And one file caught Leary's eye. Subject Z, human child. Cole read over her shoulder, eyes narrowing. Wait, that's from Earth, from my world. The Red Path is operating there too, Leary whispered. They're not just hunting aliens, they're taking anyone they think they can bend. She stood up. We can't keep hiding. We need to go public. Cole hesitated. Broadcasting this means making ourselves targets. You, Sarai, are already targets, Leary said. We've been running since day one, but maybe if others knew the truth, they'd stand with us. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Hours later, they docked with a derelict galactic relay platform floating near the edge of the Ensalon system, once used for broadcasting diplomatic transmissions. It had been shut down after the Empire's collapse. Its core transmitter still worked, barely. Cole wired in the uplink manually. Leary stood before the cam node, her hands trembling only slightly. Ready? Cole asked. She nodded. Turn it on. Across the galaxy, ships, outposts, and colonies suddenly received a signal from an unknown source. The screen flickered, then steadied on the face of a young alien girl with silver eyes and a scar across her cheek. My name is Leary, she said. I was taken as a child, starved, tested, and nearly left to die. Her voice wavered, but she stood tall. The people who did it call themselves the Red Path. They call it order. They call it science. But what they do is theft, slavery, murder. She held up the data chip. These are their crimes. Names, locations, plans, proof. Images flashed, prison cells, tortured children, maps of illegal facilities, names of officials bought and paid for. And I'm not the only one. They've taken hundreds like Mialin and Human, changed them, sold them. I'm done running. Her voice grew firm. I'm just one girl, but I was saved by someone who believed I was worth saving. A human who refused to walk away. She looked directly into the lens. And I believe others will too. Help us fight back, spread the truth. Then the screen went black. The signal traveled farther than anyone expected. Hacktivists on Earth picked it up. Rebel cells on Caldora rebroadcast it. Even a few low-ranking peacekeeper units tired of doing the Red Path's dirty work started asking questions. The galaxy stirred. And the Red Path noticed. Hours later, aboard the Dustwalker, Cole monitored nearby chatter as the signal bounced from node to node. We've stirred the pot, he muttered. Now let's see what crawls out, Leary replied. That's when the sensor alarm blared. Inbound vessel. Class, Predator strike. ID Falker. Cole paled. Oh no, Leary turned. You know that ship? Yeah, and the psychopath flying it. The Valka Seraphim wasn't just a Red Path warship, it was a message. A sleek vessel, black as obsidian with red veins pulsing along its hull. No one who saw it ever forgot it, and few survived it. Its captain, known only as Aaron Vec, was a hybrid part cyborg, part clone, rumored to have once been Red Path's first experiment that worked. And now, he was their assassin. The chase began instantly. The Dustwalker roared out of the relay's orbit, thrusters screaming. Cole pushed the engines past safe limits. Sparks flew from the dashboard. Where's the nearest asteroid belt? He barked. Leary scanned. Less than 3 clicks, west quadrant. But there's radiation interference. Perfect. Behind them, the Seraphim launched a spread of micro-torpedoes. Cole jerked the ship hard to the left, skimming debris. The first explosion rocked their tail, shields down to 30%. Sarai cried from the back. Cole snarled. Hang on. He dove the ship into the asteroid belt, weaving between tumbling giants of stone and ice. The Seraphim followed, careful, precise, too precise. He's not trying to kill us, Cole realized. Aloud, he's trying to disable the ship. They want us alive. Leary stared at the console. Then let's disappoint them. She slid into the gunner's chair and powered up the rear plasma cannon. Her hands trembled. But only for a moment. Then she steadied them, locked on, and fired. A blast of burning light slammed into the Seraphim's forward sensors, blinding it. Cole spun the Dustwalker beneath a frozen asteroid shelf and cut all power. Silence. The Seraphim drifted past. Searching. Cole held his breath. Seconds passed, then minutes, then it warped away, temporarily fooled. Later, as they limped toward a hidden rebel refueling depot, Cole sat beside Leary in the cockpit. "You did good," he said. She didn't answer. "Right away then. I want to end this." He looked at her quietly. "And we will." Fire in the void. The Dustwalker rested in the shadow of Kerrick Station, a hidden refueling depot carved into a shattered moon. The hull still steamed from the last encounter with the Valka Seraphim, and half its systems were patched with salvaged scrap and borrowed parts. But it still flew, still fought, and so did they. Across the galaxy. Leary's broadcast had done more than expose the red path. It had lit a spark. Protests broke out on Earth. Smugglers and refugees began exchanging red path coordinates in secret. Outposts once paid to look away now refused access. Even certain mid-tier Red Path agents had defected, delivering files, children, and damning truth in return for sanctuary. And now, a rebellion was forming. Small, scattered, but real. Cole stood at a makeshift strategy table with rebels from 6 different species. Leary was at his side. No longer the scared girl he'd pulled from the dust, but someone composed, steeled by pain, but not ruled by it. "We hit their primary distribution hub on Vesa 9. Said a scaled rebel with golden eyes. "It's where they move most of the trafficked children. If we cripple that, we destroy their logistics." Another leader, an ex-peacekeeper turned whistleblower, pointed to an orbital route. "But the Seraphim is guarding the sector now. If it catches us, we won't run this time," Leary interrupted quietly. "We finish it." 2 days later, under a fractured nebula lit by electric blue, a dozen rebel ships warped in above Vesa 9. The Dustwalker led them, and the Seraphim was waiting. It emerged from the shadow of the moon like a beast. Awake, black hole gleaming with hatred, its weapons primed. Cole gritted his teeth. "Showtime," he flipped, "comes open. All units scatter formation, draw fire, shield the drop vessels." Leary joined him in the cockpit, wearing makeshift body armor and a determined stare. "What's the plan?" she asked. "You're not going down there." "Yes," she said. "I am." He turned, voice rising. "It's a war zone." She reached out, rested her hand on his. "I was made to be nothing. They called me property. But I've already died once, Cole. I won't waste the life you gave back to me." He didn't argue again because she was right. Explosions fled across the battlefront as rebel ships danced and fired. The Dustwalker dived hard, evading flak from the Seraphim. The cargo bay opened and Leary leaped. She fell like a comet toward the distribution hub below, shielded by a reinforced drop pod. Other rebels followed Deitch, targeting different wings of the massive fortress. Inside the facility, chaos erupted. Leary tore through security lines with stolen clearance codes and stun rounds, searching corridor after corridor. Cells, cages, screams, but also children. She freed as many as she could, her voice cracking as she spoke in different tongues, comforting, guiding, promising safety. She found one room where they had started another experiment. Children hooked 2 tubes, monitors flashing, brains wired to neural override interfaces. She ripped the control systems apart. When a guard drew on her, she didn't flinch. She moved like she remembered the way Voss had taught her. One shot, one step, one breath. She was no longer prey. Meanwhile, above the Seraphim had locked onto the Dustwalker. Aaron Vec himself appeared on their comms, his face smooth, expressionless, more machine than man. "Return the girl," he said, "and I will consider a quick death." Cole laughed bitterly. "You really haven't learned a damn thing." Then he hit the booster and launched directly toward the Seraphim's main thrusters. "Cole," Sarai said from behind. "That's suicide." "I know." He slammed the controls forward, punching through the Seraphim's rear shield just long enough to deploy a power disruptor bomb. Katisi of the rebels. It latched to the hull, beeped twice, and detonated. The Seraphim spun out of control, still alive, but wounded, bleeding plasma. Cole's ship barely escaped the blast radius. Below, Leary had done the impossible. The hub was falling, cells unlocked, guards overwhelmed, children escaping, but she stayed behind, guiding the last group toward evac shuttles, refusing to leave until the final room was clear. That's when Aaron Vec came for her. He emerged from smoke and fire like a shadow unburned, armor black as night, weapon drawn. You, he said, you should have died in the sand, and you should have never touched a child. Leary growled. She stood her ground, dot blaster raised. Her hand trembled, but she didn't retreat, and then back. The shot didn't come from her weapon. It came from behind Vek Cold. He stood in the broken doorway, sidearm smoking. Vec staggered, part of his skull blown off, wires exposed, but he wasn't down yet. He turned on Cole, fired again. This time, into the power core embedded in Vec's spine that it lit up like a sun, and then he was gone. The war was over in less than a day. The facility fell. The children were rescued. The rebels once hunted and scattered were hailed as heroes, and Leary was no longer a test subject. She was a symbol. Weeks later, she stood on the galactic broadcast station, surrounded by children once caged. Her voice rang through the stars. To anyone still hiding, still afraid, still waiting for someone to save you, I'm here to say you matter and you're not alone. Behind her, Cole smiled, not because the fight was over, but because now it had truly begun. Hope had a face, and her name was Leary. End of story.